You won't go very long in the world of software development without hearing the word Git uttered. And if you do hear that word Git, there's a very good chance that you're going to hear the word GitHub uttered in tow, which of course begs the question, what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Well, there's a short answer, which I'm going to give you right away, just in case you're in a hurry. And there's a longer, more in-depth answer, which I hope you're going to stick around for. But the short answer is this. Git is a freely available, simple to install, open source distributed version control tool managed and maintained by the Linux Software Foundation that facilitates collaboration between developers by making it easy for them to share code. It's got some branching features that encourage devs to experiment and take chances. And fundamentally, it's a DevOps tool that software developers really love. So what is GitHub? GitHub is a pay-for-use online service, although they do have some very generous free tiers, that runs this free open source Git tool on servers in the cloud. Yes, GitHub has taken the free open source tool, put it on servers in the cloud, charged people for it, and made billions. But of course, to say that GitHub just runs Git in the cloud is a bit of a disservice to GitHub. GitHub provides a comprehensive ecosystem of online development tools that are built around Git. They help with continuous integration. They help with collaboration, and they greatly enhance the user experience, so much so that developers are willing to pay for what otherwise is a free tool. Hi, I'm Cameron McKenzie. I'm the editor-in-chief over at theserverside.com, and I have to be one of the world's biggest Git advocates. I've got all sorts of tutorials about Git and GitHub over on the server side, including a 2-hour tutorial on how to learn and use Git and GitHub. But for now, I just want to go into a little bit more detail about what Git is, what Git has to offer, and what the key differences are between Git and GitHub. So I gave you that short answer. Here is the long answer. So Git is an open source tool that was built by Linus Torvalds, and it's managed by the Linux Foundation. And it bills itself as a distributed version control tool. And I think that's actually a pretty good description because it describes two of the three things that I think are really important about Git. First of all, it's a version control tool, which means you can write code and then you can version that code. Take a snapshot of that code. Create like a save point for that code. In Git, we call that a commit. And so you write some code and then you're happy with what you've done, you do a Git commit. You write a little bit more code, you do another Git commit. And it takes a snapshot, a picture of the state of all the files in your project, in your repository, in the folder that has all of your files at that point in time. I often describe it to friends as like a save point in a video game. It's like, when you're playing a video game, you get so far, you hit a save point, and you go further, you hit another save point, go further, you hit another save point, and then you die. Well, you don't start back at the beginning, right? You start at a previous save point. So in Git, every commit is like a save point. It's like, you do some work, you do a commit, all of a sudden you do some more work, you break something. You need to go back in time and see where you were at this morning or yesterday evening when things worked. You can roll your environment back to that point in time very easily. Also, people can see your progress, by looking at the Git commits. It's a very, very powerful feature. The other big part of Git is that it's distributed, right? It's a distributed version control tool, which means you can collaborate with others. You can share your code with others. You can take your code and you can push it to somebody else's Git repository where they can look at your code, maybe even fix your code or give you some insights on how to make it better. And then when they're done, you can pull the changes that they made back to your local repository. So you have this ability to share your code with others in a distributed environment. That's why they call it a distributed version control tool. Now, one thing that they leave out there, and I think it's the most important feature of Git, is the ability to do branching. And we're going to cover branching in this course as well. But essentially what a branch is in Git is it's an isolated environment that branches off the main line of development where you can do code changes, you can update things, you can break things, and it's all isolated from the work that others are doing. So you can take chances, you can experiment, you can try to do something that's brilliant. And if you do something brilliant, well, you can merge your code back into the main branch or the master branch and show everybody how brilliant you are. And if you mess things up, you can just delete the branch and nobody is the wiser. So it gives you that ability to do isolated development and take chances. That's called branching. And I think that's one of the best features of Git. So that's Git, is a tool that you install, download free, open source, does all of these amazing things. So what is GitHub? Well, one challenge with Git is actually sharing code with others. It's you can do it, but sharing your Git repo with the Git repo of somebody else on the network can be challenging. So what some brilliant people did was they took Git and they put it on a server and they connected it to the internet, put it in the cloud, and said to people, we're going to make it easy for you to connect to our Git repo and share code with others. We'll just sort of be like a central repo for you. So a bunch of people just put Git, that open source tool, on a server in the cloud and made it easy for people to connect to it and share code. So really, GitHub is just Git running on a server somewhere, and making some of the things in Git just a little bit easier to do. And by the way, GitHub was sold to Microsoft for $9 billion a little while ago. So taking open source software, putting on a server somewhere, and making it easy for people to use, it's a very good business model. Now, GitHub does more than just allow you to have a Git repository in the cloud. There's a bunch of things that Git doesn't do out of the box. Git doesn't have any security built in. Why would they? It's not part of the product. It's not part of their goal. But if you're an enterprise, you want to control who can see your code. So GitHub provides authentication services. No one can see a private repo unless they log in and authenticate themselves. GitHub also provides features like workflow. So if you change some code, you push it to the server, and you want that to go into the main branch, you want that to go into deployment, well, you can set up workflows through things called pull requests that make sure that maybe someone senior on the team sees your code before it goes into that main or master branch and gets pushed out into the world. So there's workflows associated with it. GitHub keeps metrics for you. GitHub allows you to do things like forking of your code. There's even sort of a follow aspect in GitHub. So it almost has a social media aspect to it. GitHub will actually do hosting for you. They'll do free hosting and allow you to build blogs using Jekyll. So GitHub isn't just Git in the cloud. They provide a whole bunch of other services built around Git. But fundamentally, they're just making Git easier to use. It is Git in the cloud. So there you go. Those are the key differences between Git and GitHub. Now, if you enjoyed that tutorial, why don't you head over to theserverside.com. We got lots of great tutorials on Git and GitHub and software development and Agile and Scrum. And of course, on my YouTube channel, I've got some thorough, comprehensive tutorials on how to use Git and GitHub, and also a popular tutorial on how to use GitHub Desktop as well, which will really help you get into the world of Git and GitHub. If you're interested in my personal antics, please follow me on Twitter. My handle is @CameronMCNZ, and I'd really love it if you shared this video and tweeted at me. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, why don't you subscribe on the YouTube?